Chapter 1. Dr. Elim Kibbet sat in his white-walled office, watching the sun rise over the rocky landscape of northeastern Kenya. The Mandera Referral Hospital was a run-down facility in one of the most impoverished corners of the world, and it had recently become his responsibility. Some in his shoes would consider that a burden. He considered it an honor. Beyond his closed door, screams pierced the silence. Footsteps pounded the hallway, and a nurse yelled, "Doctor, come quick!" There was no question which doctor they were calling for. Elim Kibbet was the only physician left. The others had departed after the terror attacks. Many of the nurses had followed. The government had denied requests for armed guards at the rural hospital. They'd also defaulted on an agreement to pay the health workers fairly and on time. That had sent another wave of workers fleeing the crumbling facility. The hospital operated with a skeleton staff now. The remaining members either had no place to go or were too dedicated to leave, or in the case of Elim Kibbet, both. He donned his white coat and hurried down the hall toward the cries for help. Mandera was one of Kenya's poorest countries. Per capita income was $267, less than 75 cents per day. The dusty, dirt road town lay at the crossroads of three nations, Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. People in Mandera lived off the land, often barely scraping by, and found joy where they could. It was a place of breathtaking beauty and unspeakable brutality. The world's deadliest diseases were endemic to the region, but they were far from the most dangerous elements in the area. Al-Shabaab, an Islamic terror group, an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, attacked the villages and government facilities frequently. Their ruthlessness was staggering. Less than a year ago, Al-Shabaab militants stopped a bus outside Mandera and ordered all the Muslim passengers to get off. They refused and instead crowded around the Christian passengers. Al-Shabaab dragged everyone from the bus, both Muslim and Christian, lined them up, and shot them. 37 people died that day. As Elim raced down the dingy hall, that was his first thought. Another Al-Shabaab attack. To his surprise, he found two young white men in the exam room, their dark brown hair long and shaggy, their thick beards dripping with sweat. One man stood by the door holding a video camera. The other lay on the exam table, rolling side to side, his eyes closed. The stench of diarrhea and vomit was overwhelming. Two nurses were leaning over the man, performing an intake exam. One drew a thermometer from the man's mouth and turned to Elim. 104, doctor. The young man with the video camera let it fall to the side and caught Elim by the upper arm. "You've got to help him!" Elim pulled free and extended his arm to push the man into the corner, away from the exam table. "I will. Back away, please." Elim's initial diagnosis was malaria. The disease was rampant in tropical and subtropical regions, especially impoverished areas like Mandera, which was only about 250 miles from the equator. Worldwide, over 200 million people were infected with malaria each year, and nearly 500,000 died from the disease. 90% of those deaths took place in Africa, where a child died of malaria every minute. Westerners visiting Kenya frequently came down with malaria as well. It was treatable, and that gave Elim some hope as he snapped on a pair of blue gloves and began his exam. The patient was barely conscious. His head tossed from side to side as he mumbled. When Elim pulled the man's shirt up, his diagnosis changed immediately. A rash ran from his abdomen to his chest. Typhoid fit these symptoms better. It was also endemic to the region and was caused by bacteria, Salmonella typhi, that bred in open pools of water. Typhoid was manageable, curable. Fluoroquinolones, one of the few antibiotics they had on hand, would treat it. Elim's hope vanished when the man's eyelids parted. Yellow, jaundiced eyes stared up at him. Blood pooled at the corner of his left eye, then trickled down the man's face. "Get back," Elim said, spreading his arms out, sweeping the nurses with him. "What's the matter with him?" the man's friend asked. "Clear the room," Elim said. The nurses evacuated immediately, but the young man stood his ground. "I'm not leaving him."